Bharatiya Janata Party's recent election results and victory in Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand are expected to provide the much needed fillip for economic reforms, long delayed economic reforms that are actually stalling economic growth in India for a long time now. It's very important to realize that a paradigm shift in the way the country is governed economically and economic institutions operate is imperative if India is to regain the 8 or 9% growth that it averaged between 2003 and 2009. It simply cannot be business as usual. The BJP government came to power in 2014 promising to change the way business was done, and there's no denying that they've tried very hard. Some moves that are not seeing immediate results are expected to yield dividends sometime later and are actually paving the way for future sustained economic growth. What are the most important economic reforms that the party needs to carry through? The list is endless, and I certainly can't hope to provide an exhaustive list within 5 minutes. But let me just touch upon the most important ones. The first one actually is sustained reform and investment in agriculture. This would not be called reform because reform normally suggests a very different way of doing things. In agriculture, a sector that's been in considerable distress for a long time now, what's needed is to persist with investments in infrastructure which the UPA government had revived in 2005, and then essentially which kind of were diluted after 2012 when the fiscal deficit hit the roof. When the fiscal deficit, when this happens, normally even programs that essentially with low discount rates but which have long yielding, long-term benefits are normally jettisoned, and agriculture was one of them. This is particularly unfortunate. The argument that only 15% of India's GDP comes from agriculture is facile. 50 to 60% of the labor force is engaged in agriculture, and that explains rural poverty. Such a large percentage of population being so unproductive and essentially. So how do we harmonize and how do we channelize this considerable energy into agriculture? One is sustained increases in productivity. Productivity has fallen, and essentially all steps must be taken to revive productivity, even if it means sustained investment, which I'm sure will yield important dividends in the days to come. So revival of the agricultural sector is the most important. The other one, and which the Modi government has, I'm very happy to note, spoken about, is the reform of the land and labor markets. India has a structural problem with labor. Unemployment is a structural problem, and demonetization has only made a bad situation worse. Okay? We need to do something to employ the millions of youth entering the workforce every year. Not enough is being done. The situation is so bad that even in the boom years of economic growth, we've been faced with jobless growth. Not enough jobs are being created. Amit Shah's recent statement that no country can provide 50 crore jobs, no economy can provide 50 crore jobs, again, is facile. We have not even come close, okay, to realizing our potential in employing people. And for that to happen, the workforce has to be, there has to be an intertemporal shift in the labor force, in how the labor force is deployed. You need productivity gains which essentially will push propel agricultural labor into manufacturing. And for that, the manufacturing sector has to grow. We've been talking about Make in India for a long time now, but then that's going nowhere. Again, there are structural impediments, land reforms, et cetera, that are needed to get the economy going. Narendra Modi's government has spoken about essentially rooting out corruption. And so I expect that the next 2 years, and then if he wins beyond, will be spent in essentially increasing compliance. One area of compliance where that needs immediate attention is tax collection. GST is expected to help, and I hope it kind of gets rolling sometime in 2017 July 1st, 2017 is given as the date, but I hope it's actually happened because we've been hearing about GST for just too long. Earlier it was the Congress which accused the BJP of delaying and kind of hobbling progress on the GST, and now it's the other way around. But I hope all parties put their shoulder to the wheel and pass what can be very, very crucial legislation for the government. Once GST actually, there's two benefits of GST. One, increasing fiscal, improving the fiscal benefit of the government, and at the same time generating growth. Okay? So once that happens, I think India will be on the fast track to economic growth. So the government has a full plate ahead. If simply the fact that political partisanship essentially will not hold back the government is only one part of it. It's important for the government to realize that there are structural obstacles and it has to take everyone with it. Okay? It has to take every political party with it, and I hope it does so. Just the fact that it has a simple majority in parliament and is expected to kind of dominate the numbers to change in the Rajya Sabha really don't do much for the government. A country as diverse as India can only be governed by a federal structure, and unless all walks of people and every strand of political opposition are taken together, I don't think any of these changes will be sustainable. All the moves that were initiated, for which the NDA government is claiming credit for, and it doesn't matter in which regime they were passed, but it's very important that they get moving. GST, creation of a debt market, structural reforms in agriculture, rationalization of subsidies, for example, elimination or dilution of fertilizer subsidies, and transferring at least part or most of that money into irrigation can work wonders for productivity. That's the need of the hour. It's important to confront well-entrenched political interest groups which are actually holding progress back. Narendra Modi's government has the agenda. The country is with him, and I hope he makes the most of it to actually put India on the fast track to growth that he promised. Thank you.